Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
Cruising your way next, Off 90. A modern immigrant story. Artisan canoe paddles. A tour of a museum dedicated to luncheon meat. Plus, an artist who hit the road for inspiration. There's the exit up ahead for our next stop, Off 90. Hi, I'm Barbara Keith. Thanks for joining me on this journey, Off 90. A poem emblazoned on the Statue of Liberty welcomes immigrants to America with this phrase: "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." Refugees from Myanmar are an example of who the Statue of Liberty is looking for. We talked to a local community of immigrants from Myanmar about their immigration to the U.S.
I grew up there for 13 years, and that's half of my life there, and also spent half of my life in America. And I'm now a citizen of American, so I call myself as an American, but I also call myself a refugee from Thailand. But then I also call myself as a Korean person too. It's kind of a little difficult, yeah, to identify myself as that. My name is Astir Paulo. I am Korean. I currently live in Austin, Minnesota. So the name of the store, our store is Ganyo Grocery Store, and Ganyo is another our Korean language for Korean, and we still do not understand why Ganyo is turned into Korean. Maybe it was hard for people to call it, and then it changes to Korean. It's like Karen, like a person's name, you know. Ganyo represent our ethnic group and grocery store. A lot of our customers include people from Southeast Asian, so people, especially Korean in the Korean population. And then we also have some for the island, Pacific Islanders in here too. I grew up in Mela refugee camp in Thailand. That's where I lived 13 years of my life there. It was totally different from here, and we were very restricted to go anywhere else. So we have to be in our camp only. So if we want to go out of the camp, we have to do a lot of requirements. When my parents and the other people moved to Thailand, the Thai government or people who are authorized it allowed the Korean people to stay in the part of the border of Thailand, and that's where the Korean were able to find bamboos, trees, and anything that will make their own homes. So they have to build everything by themselves. So we were very poor. We didn't have a lot of materials that we would have in here. We didn't have electricity. We didn't have phone line services at the time when I was younger. As we grew up, the church, not the church, but the Bible school were in the refugee camp were able to provide running water for us, and then for electricity for us, for lights. We were allowed to choose any countries that we wanted to go to, and we were provided, but we had to go through a lot of steps to come into the United States, including interviews, filling out forms, interviews, and background check, and then medical checkup also. And then after we passed all of those, we also have a little training about America, and that's how we learned just a portion, tiny little bit of America and how it likes to live in America. So when I first came to the United States, I was 13 years old, and what surprised me was the building, because where we lived in the refugee camp, the buildings that we used to see were built out of bamboo and trees and leaves. But over here, it's all different, and it was totally different. Like the road, we have like constructions and everything here. Everything totally different in here, yeah. So since we moved here in Austin and we have our grocery store in here, it's a little bit difficult for our family to used to live the way we used to. We usually have time together after 7:30 or 8 p.m. And then that's when we have our whole family meal. We always eat together as a family for dinner. Sometimes we don't. We used to also have our breakfast together, but since all of us have varied time in here, we don't really get to eat together. But the only time is after night when we have our dinner. Our Korean people have really knitted really close community in here, so we try our best to help our community members who are in need. And usually when we do not let our community members go homeless either, since we're in a new country, a foreign country, and all of we have is our community, and we usually stay with one another. And that's how we got to come. A lot of people got to come to Austin also because they know people in the Korean community, and then those people also go invited them to here, tell them there are new jobs or provide opportunities for them to live in here as well. We used to call Myanmar Burma, and that's how the name that I used to grow up with. That's how I would say Myanmar as Burma as even now. And I don't remember. I don't know why they changed it to Myanmar. But a lot of I would say a lot of Korean people disagree with that, because Myanmar in Burmese is Myanmar is the ethnic group, the Burmese people that I would say the Burmese that are not Korean or any other people, and then a lot of the Korean do not like it because it represents one ethnic group only and not the whole. And that's why we still prefer to call this a Burma, I would say. So Korean and Korean, a lot of people said that we came from the same ethnic group, but then we divided it. But I'm not sure. But what I've known is Korean and Korean are totally different. Our culture is different. We share similar patterns of clothes, but ours is also different too. They share the same Korean, the same clothes, like the patterns and then the string and everything, but they have their own language. They speak totally different. If you asked me to interpret for Korean people, I would totally miss it. I wouldn't say it right at all. The way we communicated was we used Burmese language. So that's how we communicated with one another. But a lot of the Korean people lived among the Korean people when we were in the refugee camp, or even when we were in the States. So a lot of Korean people can speak Korean, and a few Korean people can speak Korean as well. But That's why it might confuse some people, because some Korean people can communicate with Korean in Korean language, but they thought that they speak the same language, but it's totally different languages that we speak. Our Korean people do not show what we go through. Even going back to what I've seen when I was younger, the videos that I've seen from the people who have interviewed because of war and they lost their family, they would smile at you. And even though they lost their loved one, they would still smile at you and talk to you about the struggle that they have been through. So we try to not forget, but we try to do our best to move on to the next step and then try to provide the best for our future.
Cousins Zach Fellman and Todd Randall own the Sanborn Canoe Company. In the fall of 2012, they launched their artisan-painted paddle line, inspired in part from the heyday of canoeing, when voyagers traveled the landscape of the New World by canoe. Paintings and tales of that era show elaborately painted canoes and paddles that inspired the Cousins to carry on that tradition.
Sanborn started with a collection of friends who'd been canoeing and camping together for a number of years. And beyond that, one of those friends is my cousin, and our grandpa is a woodworker going back years and years. And so he'd made paddles, he'd made canoes, and he told us about some canoes that he and some buddies had made in the 60s, which kind of inspired us to try to build our own. And so we did, it went well, and if you got a nice cedar strip canoe, you really ought to have something other than plastic paddles. So we started making paddles and just took off from there. My name is Todd Randall, and I'm one of the founders of Sanborn Canoe Company, and the title that I'm most proud of is Craftsman. A lot of what makes Sanborn what it is family, friends, and canoeing is a generational activity. You don't usually learn to do it apart from somebody teaching you, and so for us, yeah, the woodworking and the canoeing, it's kind of a family heritage for us, and we're hopefully passing that on to more folks. Every paddle starts with raw pieces of lumber, which we then cut down into different thicknesses, different strips, which we glue together. First gluing together the shaft, and then we glue on a blade and then the grip. And then from there, I take the paddles and do a little bit of rough shaping with a planer, a hand planer, cut it out on the bandsaw, and then I put a tip on, which protects it from rocks and logs and things of that sort. And then from there, I do a little more exact shaping and sanding, getting it to basically the final paddle, where I then fiberglass it, and then sand the fiberglass, epoxy everything but the grip, and then dip it in varnish. And then one of the things that kind of sets our paddles apart is once it's been dipped in varnish, and that's allowed to dry, then I do some wet sanding to make it really smooth and wax it, which gives it a really smooth feel in your hand. A handful of years ago, we started a partnership with Merrimack Canoe Company, and at the time we were just making them paddles, and then a couple of years ago we were able to bring Merrimack Canoe Company here. So we purchased the company, moved it here, and so we're very fortunate to be able to carry on a heritage that goes back to the 50s. Yeah, we're really proud to be able to carry that on. So as far as making a canoe, I mean, you know, there are a handful of things that kind of set a Merrimack apart. It's a marriage of new technologies and old school look. It's a composite hull, carbon fiber, Kevlar, but then hand-done woodwork to finish it. So there's actual cherry ribs. Looks like a classic rib and plank canoe from 150 years ago. We've got a handful of different models, each fitting different functions. Some that are really quick, some that hold a lot of gear, some that are just platforms for fly fishing or for duck hunting. So we offer a lot of different varieties there. but only weighs about 45, 50 pounds depending on the model. And then cherry and ash finish it off with the gunnels. And yeah, you can get a lighter boat, but I don't think you can get a boat that looks any better. One of our paddles is called the Sam Special, named after a friend of ours who loaned us the tools to get started. Sam, he's I mentioned Mark, who does all the prep work on our paddles. Sam's his dad, and he can't turn down a deal, so he's got a garage full of tools, and so he lent us clamps, he lent us tools, and we couldn't have done it apart from his generosity, and that continues now still. So yeah, the names are personal and local, and a variety of inspirations, but yeah, tell a story. I hope it becomes a family business. I hope that we continue to grow and be successful for years to come. We've been at it for not quite a decade, so being able to pass it on to my kid, she's only 2, so we got some time before that could happen, but whenever she sees a canoe on my car, she gets pretty excited, so hopefully, yeah. We build canoe paddles, we build canoes, but really at the heart of what we do is people. My hope is that ultimately shapes how we treat our customers, and we build a paddle not just to build a paddle, but we build a paddle so that people can go on an adventure, and we build it to look good so it can go on your wall and hopefully inspire your next adventure.
The Spam Museum is dedicated to Spam, that brand of canned, pre-cooked meat made by the Hormel Foods Corporation. It is located in Austin, Minnesota. The museum tells the history of the Hormel Company, the origin of Spam, and its place in world culture. We took a tour of the museum.
So you have pork and ham, then you have water, sugar, salt, potato starch, and sodium nitrate. So it's really very easy.
Spam, 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 spam. Hormel's new miracle meat in a can.
I am Savile Lord, and I'm the manager of the Spam Museum and Community Relations for Hormel Foods. The Spam Museum is here in Austin, Minnesota. It is a free museum. And the reason that it's here in Austin is because it is the home of Hormel Foods, and Hormel Foods owns the Spam brand. Hormel Foods is one of the only Fortune 500 companies outside of the Twin Cities in the state of Minnesota. The Spam Museum was an idea that was formulated several years ago that kind of took the town of Austin, Minnesota, and said, what do we have to offer that will really celebrate the Hormel Foods company? And that was Spam.
There's only one Spam, and you can serve Spam so many different ways. Cold or hot, Spam hits the spot. All quality canned meats by Hormel.
And so we were able to take a fun, kitschy idea and make it into a museum that was super fun and a great place for people to come and visit. Spam is quite important to the Hormel product name. We have been continuously growing the Hormel Foods family with different protein bases over the past 10-15 years. But what has been great about that is Spam has been around now for 80 years. So it shows a company that's been around for 126 what staying power is truly about. J. Hormel invented Spam in 1936, and he said, now how do we go about marketing this? And so just at year end, he was throwing a New Year's Eve party, and he thought, hey, got a great group of people together. I'll offer $100 to see who can name this new spiced ham that I have. And Kenneth Dagnow, who was the nephew of a vice president at Hormel at the time, who was in fact an actor in California, who was in Austin for the holidays, was at the party, and he actually came up with the name Spam, the SV for spiced and the AM for ham. And he was able to leave $100 richer, which in those days, that was a lot of money. Really got started being produced in 1937. And right along that time, we started into the Second World War. And so we had Spam being delivered to the troops, and we also had the Spam being delivered to the Allies, to our allies, to help feed all of the military personnel who were around the world helping to fight World War II. So it proved to be quite the addition to their diets, and helped really because, again, it's baked in its own can. It was something that was shelf stable, and they could bring with them in their backpacks, and they could have on a constant basis to feed them that protein that they needed to help with the energy level to continue to fight for our country. You know, you're in this museum every day, so you think, oh, everybody's seen it, you know. But then you have these people come out and they're jumping up and down outside in front of the pig, and they're posing with the pig, and they have such a joy about them. You know, for some people it's on their bucket list. We have 40 countries that Spam is sold in. Not many people know that. So we take them down an international marketplace and point out 6 of those countries and explain why they are important and why we focused on them. Spam is enjoyed all over. So in the United States, and if you go into your grocery store, you usually find 2 to 3 different varieties. And it's funny because those varieties will differ depending on where you are. So you'll find maybe teriyaki and plain Spam and cheese in California. But down in Texas, you'll find classic Spam, you'll find hot and spicy Spam. Then down in Tennessee, you'll find hickory smoke with some of the other varieties. So it's very fun that you can see different varieties in different parts of the United States. The Spam Museum continues to be a free museum down here in Austin. And that is an important aspect of what we do. Spam has a great history to it, but then it also is so much fun. And so what is so great about the museum is we've been able to marry the two. To say, you know, you can come for a fun-filled day, but then have an educational experience as well on a product that's been around for 80 years.
If you think Spam is just a sandwich meat, you're wrong. This special blend of pork shoulder with ham is also a great breakfast meat.
C. Anthony Huber calls his work Abstract Construction-ism. He gets his inspiration from being on the road, actually from the road itself. We talked with Anthony about what that means and where he's going to go from here.
Yeah, the apple pie gets better the deeper you go into Iowa, according to whoever wrote that. I'm blanking. I'm C. Anthony Huber. I'm an artist. Well, actually, I've been a photographer for about 30 years, so I think I've always had a strong inclination towards my visual environment. And about 30 years ago, I started taking photographs of a lot of urban settings, but it's been about 8 years since I've actually been working with paints and other medium to translate those inspirations to a different format, which is to use the visual language on canvas. So I consider myself a painter, even though at heart I think I'm still a photographer. And then I also use very unusual mediums like concrete and asphalt to put on canvas, but I still consider those painting mediums. So 30 years in photography, about 8 to 10 in working with it in another medium. I think it's amazing when you step out your door, you can see all sorts of what I call inspiration points. I'm fascinated by what I call abstract language of intersection markings. For example, when they lift a manhole cover that has a line and then they put it back down and it doesn't line up again, that's proof that something's happened there. It's proof of existence. And so not only does it create an interesting abstract language between a broken line, it's also telling a story of something that has happened within that environment. And so there's really a story behind all of that abstract language. I find the language just beautiful. I want to capture that history in a visual way because I find it very attractive. I applied for it's a place called the Vermont Studio Center, and it's the largest internationally based artist residency in the United States, and they have writers and artists that get invited based on grants to come there. So I had applied a couple of times and finally was accepted and went out this November, and I spent the entire month of November out there. And they give you basically a room, they give you 3 meals a day, they give you studio space. I had a really large studio to work in. It's in a small town called Johnson, Vermont, very rural. It's right on the Gihon River. And I went out there with the idea that I was going to try to, again, work with new work. I personally made a breakthrough there, and I really felt like it changed the way I do my own work. And had I not gone there, had I not been in that environment by the river, been around all those others, I would not have discovered, I think, the work that I am now going to pursue. So I've purchased a Honda Element advertisement, which are no longer made, but it's kind of a small little van, and I'm going to be able to live in that, and I'm going to travel around the country in various different directions to take my paintings to various rivers and put them in there and be able to photograph those. And I'm just going to hit the road for as long as my finances will allow me, which we'll see how that works out. But also just being able to be moving. You know, rivers are important because they're kind of always flowing, and I love that. And that's kind of how I feel in a way. I feel like maybe I'm that guy. Just always wanted to be out moving and kind of not stopping. And I really feel like this is the time to do that in my life. You know, you just don't always get chances to sort of do that, and that's what I've decided to do right now.
We've reached the end of this episode's tour off 90. Thanks for riding along. See you next time, somewhere off 90.
Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.